Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling something that I know a lot of you are dealing with, being a working student.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It's not just about having a part-time job to make some extra cash. It's like this whole other level of balancing act.
Two full-time lives, practically.
Exactly. And we got some really insightful sources from you guys.
Some great stuff in there, yeah.
So let's unpack this. Why are so many students choosing to work A&D study? I mean, is it just about the money?
Well, the sources definitely point to finances as like a huge E factor.
Oh, yeah, for sure, especially with tuition costs these days.
It's crazy, right? But it's not just about making ends meet. There's also this drive to gain experience, even before graduation.
To get ahead of the game.
Yeah, build those skills, make connections, and stand out when it's time to actually apply for those real jobs.
That makes sense. It's like an investment in your future.
Totally. And here's what I find really interesting. The sources suggest that working can actually make you more organized and independent.
Wait, really? I would think it would be the opposite, like more chaos, less time.
Right. But think about it. When you're juggling work and school,
You kind of have to get your act together.
exactly, time becomes this precious resource, and you suddenly become way more aware of how you're using it.
Wow, I can see that. Like maybe you used to be a procrastinator,
Uh-huh.
but then, bam! You get a job and suddenly every hour has to count.
You learn to prioritize, plan ahead.
No more all-nighters the day before an exam.
Well, hopefully not. But yeah, it's a whole new way of approaching time.
And the sources talk about that initial shock, right? Like that moment when it hits you, wait, I signed up for how much?
Oh yeah, it can be overwhelming for sure.
Especially at first.
Like running from class to work, trying to cram in study time, feeling like you're constantly behind.
Totally. I remember my first semester working, I was like, what have I gotten myself into?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a common feeling.
The sources even mention that some students consider quitting either work or our school.
It's tempting, for sure, when you feel like you're drowning.
But here's the thing. It's a learning curve.
It takes time.
You're not expected to be a master juggler right away.
Give yourself some grace.
Exactly. But let's not sugarcoat it. Time management is a huge ET challenge.
It's the challenge, I'd say.
Before I started working, procrastination was practically my middle name.
You had all the time in the world.
I thought so. Then I had a job and suddenly every minute mattered.
It's a whole new ball game.
The sources talk about organizing your days down to the hour.
Treating study time like a work shift, basically.
Making every minute count.
Yep. And one tip that really stood out to me was using a planner.
Oh, yes. Whether it's old school paper or a digital app, a planner can be a lifesaver.
Especially for visual learners like me.
Me too. Seeing everything laid out helps me stay on track.
It's like a roadmap for your week, or even your whole semester.
And the sources even suggest color coding.
Oh, that's a good one. Like green for work, blue for classes, yellow for study time.
Makes it easier to see where you need to be and when.
And to make sure you're actually making time for everything.
Because that's the key, isn't it? Finding that balance between work, school, and, life.
It's a juggling act, for sure.
But from what we're seeing in these sources, it's a juggling act that can actually lead to some amazing growth.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll get into those benefits in a bit, but first, let's talk about another challenge that a lot of working students face, and that's exhaustion. I mean, it's not just like being tired after a long day, it's more like this deep down burnout.
Yeah, like you're running on fumes.
Exactly. And the worst part is you might even feel guilty for wanting to rest.
Because there's always so much to do.
Right. But the sources are really clear about this. Rest is not a luxury. It's a necessity.
It's essential for actually being productive.
Exactly. So it's not about pushing yourself to the limit all the time. It's about finding a pace that's actually sustainable.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do you actually do that? The sources have some tips, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. One thing they emphasize is setting boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yeah, like with your employer and your professors.
So letting them know upfront about your other commitments.
Exactly. And not being afraid to say no sometimes.
That can be hard, though.
Yeah.
You don't want to disappoint anyone or miss out on opportunities.
I know, but think about it. Being honest about your limits actually makes you more reliable.
Because you're not over-promising and then under-delivering.
Exactly. You're setting realistic expectations.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about those little pockets of time throughout the day?
Oh, yeah. The sources talk about using those strategically.
Like lunch breaks or even just a few minutes between tasks.
Exactly. You can use that time to review notes, get some reading done.
It's like finding these hidden productivity zones.
Totally. I used to think I needed hours of uninterrupted time to get anything done.
Me too. But when I started working, I had to get way more creative.
Right. Sometimes I'd even like quiz myself with flashcards while waiting in line for coffee.
Uh-huh. That's awesome, making every minute count.
Exactly. And, sometimes you just need a little motivational boost.
Oh, for sure.
And one quote that really resonated with me from the sources was, "The secret to getting ahead is getting started."
Ooh, I like that.
It's so simple, but so true, right?
Yeah, sometimes taking that first step is the hardest part.
Like just opening your textbook or sitting down to write that paper.
But once you start, the momentum builds.
And even small steps taken consistently can lead to big results.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being persistent.
Exactly. And, speaking of finding your rhythm, the sources talk a lot about self-care.
Oh, yeah. Self-care is huge these days, isn't it?
It's essential, especially for working students.
But what does that actually look like? Is it just about getting enough sleep?
Sleep is definitely important, but it's also about finding activities that help you de-stress and recharge.
So like what's spending time in nature? Listening to music?
Yeah, anything that helps you unwind and fill your cup.
Because I used to think of self-care as this luxury thing, like something I could only do once I had everything else under control.
Right, but the sources challenge that mindset.
They're saying self-care is not a reward, it's an ingredient.
Exactly. It's essential for being productive and successful.
So it's like investing in your well-being.
Exactly. And that investment pays off in all areas of your life.
Okay, I'm convinced I need to up my self-care game.
Me too. And another important thing the sources highlight is communication.
Communication with who?
With everyone. Your employer, your professors, even your friends and family.
So like being open and honest about your workload and any challenges you're facing?
Exactly. And setting those boundaries we talked about earlier.
But also being proactive about communicating your needs.
Right. If you're feeling overwhelmed, don't suffer in silence.
Reach out to your supervisor or professor and let them know what's going on.
Exactly. Most of them actually want you to succeed.
And they're often willing to be flexible if you communicate effectively.
Absolutely. And it's not just about communicating with your superiors.
It's about seeking support from your peers, too.
Right. You're not alone in this journey.
There's a whole community of working students out there.
Sharing tips, venting frustrations, celebrating successes together.
Like a support group.
Exactly. And sometimes you need that extra boost to keep going.
Yeah.
Especially
Especially when you encounter setbacks, which, let's be real, are inevitable.
Oh, yeah. The sources talk about embracing failure as a learning opportunity.
That's interesting.
They actually say failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of the process.
So it's not about avoiding failure, it's about learning from it.
Exactly. And developing that resilience and grit that will serve you well in all areas of life.
So instead of getting discouraged when things don't go as planned,
You ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow?
I love that shifting your perspective.
Exactly. It's all about those micro adjustments.
So we've talked about the challenges, the strategies, the importance of self-care and support. But what about the rewards? What makes all this juggling worth it? It's pretty amazing how working while studying can really shape someone.
Yeah, it's like a crash course in resilience and hard work.
Exactly. The sources highlight how working students often develop this incredible work ethic.
And a deep appreciation for, perseverance.
They're not just punching a clock, they're learning how to handle real-world challenges.
It's not just about getting a paycheck. It's about building character.
The sources actually share a story about this student.
Oh, yeah.
She was working nights while taking a full load of classes.
Wow.
Exhausted all the time, but she never gave up.
That's incredible.
She said those late nights studying after work actually made her value her education even more.
That's powerful. It's like pushing past your limits shows you what you're truly capable of.
So it's not just about surviving the moment, it's about unlocking some inner strength.
Exactly. And that brings up something a lot of listeners might be wondering.
What's that?
Does all this hard work actually pay off after graduation?
Yeah. Does it translate into real-world success?
Well, the sources suggest that working students often have a smoother transition into full-time careers.
Really? Why is that?
Well, think about it. They've already developed the skills employers are looking for.
Like time management and communication.
Exactly. Plus, problem solving, resilience, teamwork.
Like they've had a head start.
They've already gotten a glimpse of what their professional world is like.
So they're not just starting from scratch.
Exactly. And they've also had the chance to build their network, gain experience, and really figure out their career goals.
So it's not just about surviving the present. It's about setting yourself up for a successful future.
Absolutely. And, beyond those practical benefits.
There's also that intangible growth, right?
Yes. The sources talk about how working students develop a strong sense of independence.
And resourcefulness.
Like they've learned to be self-reliant, solve problems on their own.
A real can-do attitude.
Exactly. And that translates into other areas of their lives too.
They're more likely to take risks, pursue their passions, and face challenges head-on.
It's like they've unlocked a whole new level of confidence.
I love that. But one thing that always strikes me about working students,
What's that?
it's their dedication to their goals. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, they're not afraid of hard work or sacrifice. It's not just about getting by. It's about reaching their full potential.
And I think that's a message we can all learn from.
Absolutely. No matter what your situation is.
That with determination, resilience, and a willingness to embrace challenges.
You can achieve incredible things.
So true. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd love to hear from our listeners.
Yeah, what are your takeaways from this exploration?
What resonated with you?
And how can you apply these lessons to your own life?
Whether you're a working student yourself, a recent grad,
Or just someone trying to find balance in a busy world?
share your thoughts, tips, and experiences with us.
We're all in this together.
Absolutely. And remember, you've got this.
Keep chasing those dreams, rocking those deadlines, and believing in yourself.
We're here cheering you on every step of the way.
Until next time, keep diving deep.